You're tuning into the Journey to Your Best Self podcast, where we explore the past holistic well-being, personal growth, and living a fulfilling life. Each episode, we bring you insightful conversations, practical tools, and inspiring stories to help you integrate your mind, body, and spirit on your journey to becoming your best self. Let's dive in and embark on this journey together. And welcome back to the Journey to Your Best Self podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian O'Neill, joined by my sister, certified life coach, hypnotherapist, and yoga instructor, Tara O'Neill. Hello, Tara.
Hello.
Today we're...
I was going to say good afternoon, but good morning, good afternoon, good night, wherever you might be.
Yeah, absolutely. As always, we're here to explore mind, body, spirit connection, inspiring listeners and viewers to achieve growth, resilience, and self-discovery. Today, we have a very special treat for everyone out there. We're thrilled to welcome Ryan Christensen, a leading expert in peak mental focus and performance with a background in intelligent operations and advanced hypnosis certifications. Ryan has dedicated his career to helping high achievers break through mental and emotional barriers to unlock their true potential. We're going to focus on his new, really groundbreaking book, Winner Peace: How to End Inner Conflict and Make Success Inevitable. And his unique technique and perspective on reframing trauma and managing emotions is sure to offer valuable insights for all listeners. So let's dive into his approaches and access the subconscious mind, transform negative emotions into positive ones, and find true alignment. Ryan, without any further ado, welcome aboard.
Thank you so much for having me. Honored to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. We were talking pre-recording a little bit about in this space, in your space, in Tara's space. Copycat's not the right word for it because I think everyone's just trying to do their best for the most part at all times. But when you talk to enough people, you do hear a lot of the same, and maybe because it works for a lot of people and it works for plurality of the people looking for help. But what kind of differentiates your hypnosis, your hypnotherapy, your approach? Can you give us kind of like a broad overview of where you're coming from and how you separate yourself from others that from the outside looking in might be offering kind of some of the same things?
Sure. So the biggest difference between what I do and what most people do is sort of a left brain, right brain difference. Okay. Left brain, very rational, very logical, very detail oriented, right? Your right brain, your emotional brain is looking at things from that 30,000 foot view. It's the forest versus the trees, right? But both of these things are driven by meaning, by stories, by beliefs. Right. So your left brain's interpreting things based on what you think things mean. And so is your right brain. But the right brain's doing it not based on individual events. It's about the themes and stories that run through a series of events. Okay. And what this means is that your mind is making meaning of the world and interpreting the world from two different perspectives at the same time. Right. The view on the ground and the view from 30,000 feet. So your brain's coming up with two different conclusions at the same time, neither one of which is wrong. They're both true and correct at the same time. So the usual approach is, oh, I think this one thing, I feel this other thing. The thing that I think is correct. No, they're both right, just from different perspectives. Okay. And the approach that almost everybody takes in the space is, okay, I've got this problem with procrastination, or I'm having a problem in social situations, or I'm at this money block. These are all very individual situational problems. Left brain. Okay. The way I look at things is you've got this very general conclusion of I'm not good enough. Okay. And that's that 30,000 foot emotional conclusion that you drew from a bunch of different stuff happening in your life. And all these individual ones are just this 30,000 foot view of I'm not good enough applied to individual situations. I'm not able to make any money because I'm not good enough. I'm not able to have love because I'm not good enough. I'm not able to go for my business because I'm not good enough. Okay. So if you change this 30,000 foot view from I'm not good enough to I am good enough, all this little stuff changes too, because it now has to be in conformity with that big thing. It's like you've got a big box in your head, label on it says I'm not good enough. There's a million things inside. Standard approach is take them out one by one, put them in different boxes. Take them out 10 at a time if you're really good. But you got a million things in there. It's going to take for freaking ever, which is why this whole healing journey seems to never end, because you're doing it all one by one. And while you're doing that, more stuff's getting stuck in the box. But there's a label on the side of the box. Take out the label, put on a new label, you're done. Change I'm not good enough to I am good enough. Everything in there now means I'm good enough. No need to deal with it all.
Wow. Yeah, well, we're done. All right, that's it. Solved it. When do people start understanding, or do you have to introduce to them that they're kind of living on that in that 2-track kind of frame of mind? Is that something that comes with age? When can you take a step back and know that you're looking outside of your body, or that 20,000, 30,000 foot view, like you said. How do you get them to that place where they're maybe they're doing it, but they don't even know that they're looking at it, right? So to
Sure.
change that label, you have to get them to see, oh, right, this is you kind of framing your reality in this way, or observing yourself. Um, does it come with age? Is there a practice? How do you get them to kind of understand and get into that,
I don't. And the reason why is because you can't go from the specific to the general. Okay. What that means is, like, if you're standing in New York, in Times Square in New York, okay, you can map that thing in exquisite detail, but that's not going to tell you anything about what New York looks like from 30,000 feet. Okay. And the conscious mind, when you're thinking about rationally, you can't get to that emotional conclusion. You don't have access to it. And you can't go from here to here because you don't know how to get that generalization from the specific. But here's the beautiful thing. We don't have to figure it out. It's not necessary. Okay. Once you get back to the back of your mind, you can simply say, show me the problem. Show me where this came from. It has the answer, knows exactly why it's doing it, and it wants to help you. Everything it does is trying to help you. So why wouldn't it help you understand? Right? So you get them in hypnosis, you drop in the back of your head, say, okay, you've got this problem, you're holding yourself back, you're sabotaging yourself, whatever it happens to be. Great. Show me the problem you're trying to solve. Tell me the story of how this came to be. And it goes ahead and walks you through, here's how things happen, here's how I got to these conclusions, this is what I felt about the situation, here's how I felt about myself. Perfect. Now we have the story, right? Which means we can then go back and say, okay, yes, you understood it this way when you're young, which drew you this conclusion. But this is how we can see it as an adult, which means we can draw this other conclusion, right? You're a kid, you're not able to get the love you needed, you grow up in a poor situation, you just don't have it, right? So you feel, oh, I'm not good enough, I don't deserve. But if the environment is such where you simply cannot get what you need because it's not available, it doesn't have anything to do with you, right? Then it's not about you deserving, it's not about you not being good enough, it wasn't available. Couldn't get it no matter how hard you tried. It wasn't about you, right? And as soon as you start doing that, you're now taking apart those old beliefs and creating a new belief set, right? And it's important to disprove the old one because you can't take the label off until you do. Otherwise, you got two beliefs that are in conflict. This old one has a lot more evidence, so this is one that's going to stay over time. So you got to disprove the old one before you can add the new one to make it stick.
Love it.
Yes, I love the work that you do. Obviously, I resonate with a lot of it. Can we, while we're on that little bit of a topic of deservingness, or we could, I don't know if you'd use the term like worth. People feel like they're not good enough,
Sure.
maybe they're not worthy. Self-sabotage, I think that is often misunderstood, and along with that can go a lot of self-blame. Would you say that this is similar to taking away that left brain rational thinking of that somebody needs to be responsible for not being good enough or not being deserving enough, and how that plays into freedom almost when maybe you introduce these parts, these younger parts, or this different way of looking at it? So short question would be, can you explain self-sabotage to you, like what it means to you in your work?
Sure. It's very simple. There's no such thing. Okay. If you're not getting what you want, you're getting what you need. Okay. People say, I ask this question to my clients all the time, like, what part of you is you? You got your consciousness, got your rational mind, got your emotional mind, got your instinctive mind. There's your neurochemistry, which is separate from all those and can play with it. Got your physical body. We'll start getting a little bit esoteric. You got your emotional body, got your energetic body, got your astral body, got your soul. So which of those is you? Because we experience things from a conscious perspective, we identify with that most strongly. But that's just the lens by which we're viewing things. It's just a part of us that's watching the movie over lives play out. But because we're seeing that as who we are, we think that that's the most important thing. But these other parts have their own wants and needs too. And if these parts have a higher priority, that's got to go up before what you want. So you're not getting what you want. There's another party that's getting what it needs. And that has to come first. Okay. If you're talking about things like self-worth and deservedness, great. That's actually really wonderful. The reason we're worried about worth these days is it's a survival issue. Okay. Back in the day, your capacity to get what you need in life was based on your capacity to do physical work, right? These days, that's not true. Nobody actually goes out, makes their own clothes, and builds their own houses. That doesn't happen, right? What do? We get a job, we get money, and we trade that money for what we need. Everything these days, survival-wise, is based on an exchange of value. So it's not about how much work you can do, it's about how valuable this thing is, right? And the problem with that is if you believe that, emotional pain is a thing and you're wounded and you've got to heal because you're traumatized, that means you got to fix something. It means you're broken. Broken things can't be valuable, right? If there's something wrong with you, you got to fix yourself. That means you're broken. Broken things can't be valuable. So until you finish up that healing and process and you fixed everything, you can't really have good self-esteem, right? So what's everybody trying to do? Okay, great. I don't feel like I'm good enough. Let me prove myself wrong. So you got there, they're trying to achieve and so forth and so on, right? Let me go ahead and make the money and get the big car and the big house and whatever it happens to be. But the problem is, as you know very well from hypnosis, your unconscious mind judges true and false based on what it already believes, right? If it doesn't match what it believes, it's false by definition, gets ignored. So if the belief is I'm not good enough, then it doesn't matter how much success you have because it doesn't match and it doesn't change how you feel. So you got to do that change from the inside out.
Yeah, that's so beautifully said. Thank you so much for clearing
Mm-hmm.
that up. And it makes me think of the trap of the self-help movement and
Yeah.
constantly being immersed in the self-help. Is there a way that people can start their journey that is not that so where they don't get stuck in this, there's something wrong with them that needs to be fixed, but that they can still grow and evolve?
So the way I see it is this. Once you get to this point, because it's really just these concepts, okay? Like if you feel like emotions are pain, then you've got to look at where the pain is. Since you feel them inside, look in here. But if emotions don't have to be pain, if you redefine them as signals, that's just helping you ask questions about the world, asking you for problems to solve. Now it's no longer pain. Now the problem's out there. It's how you're dealing with the situations, how you navigate these situations. And now it's not about changing this. It's about gaining new skills to figure out how to navigate the world. Right? Because there's this interesting phrase, one of my lady I was working hypnosis with told me, and this was one of these like blindingly obvious things that just smacks you upside the head. She said, problems have solutions, right? Which is so much simple, right? But it has some really profound implications. For example, I have autism. Didn't figure this out till last year, made a lot of things more clear, but there's nothing I can do about that. My brain is wired the way it is. I can't perceive a lot of the social things you guys do. It just doesn't happen. Therefore, since I can't solve it, that's not the problem. The problem is, given how this is wired, how do I navigate the world? How do I navigate social situations? How do I make friends? How do I navigate relationships, right? Given how this is wired, everything's working as intended, functioning exactly as designed. It's just built different. Okay. So once you start looking at that sort of thing, it's like, okay, fair enough. Now I got to put my attention on the right thing, right? The other thing to recognize is you're trying to fix yourself, and everything you do doesn't really change things, right? Should have worked by now. If that was going to work, it should have worked by now, right? Which means you're trying to fix the wrong thing, right? If it was going to work, it would have worked by now. Therefore, you're not trying. Therefore, you don't know what the problem really is. You're looking in the wrong place. So if you're looking here, changing all this doesn't change anything. The problem's not in here, right? It's like, it's really hard to find a needle in a haystack, right? Almost impossible. But the harder thing is to find a needle in a haystack when there's no needle in the haystack. Mm. You're looking for the thing that's wrong, fixing this, fixing that, the other thing, and that's not changing. Why? Because the needle's not in here. You're looking in the wrong place. You're trying to fix the wrong thing.
And do you think that we are told externally in our culture that we need to fix and find the needle in the haystack, fix ourselves, metaphorically find the needle in the haystack and get stuck in this cycle?
No, I think it's think about communication theory, speech 101 class, right? There's a sender, a message, and receiver, right? So it doesn't really matter what's happening out there. You're always the one to interpret that yourself, right? When you're young, 4, 5, 6, 7 years old, age or younger, you're making your understanding of the world based on very simple ideas, very simple capabilities, emotional things, right? Which means your interpretation of all these lessons is going to be very simple, right? Very generic. And once you create this new belief of like, I'm not good enough, for example, then all the stuff that happens is just reinforcing that belief, just adding to it, right? So why do we think we're the problem? You're in a situation where you can't get what you need, right? Like can't get the love or the money or whatever it happens to be, right? And you're young. Do you have any control over your environment at all? No. Do you have any control over the game you're playing? No. You have no agency, right? But you're the common denominator of all of these things. And you need to get the thing and you can't figure out how. And you're trying stuff. Nothing works. It's easy to say, okay, it's not the thing that I'm doing. It's me. That's the easiest conclusion to draw. And once that you create that belief, gets locked behind that wall of the unconscious mind, can't be touched from the outside in anymore. Right? It's the easiest, most natural conclusion to draw because you're trying to figure out how to get what you need and you just can't. And then
What
everything
about
else just sort of reinforces that.
Yeah, no, this is great. This is gold. I'm loving this. Well, what about the people that they don't realize that, or they don't think that it is them, and they spend their life blaming everyone else and everything else? Is it?
Mhm.
Are there two different classes of people? One that internalizes everything's my fault. One that is everything is everybody else's fault. And for lack of better words, where is that victimhood? Lie in our consciousness.
Think about it in terms of attachment style. Okay. You've got anxious attachment style and avoidant attachment style, right? Anxious attachment style says, okay, I'm not good enough. Who do I need to be in order to be in order to satisfy you, right? Avoidant attachment style is really interesting because you don't feel like you're good enough, but you can't withstand the challenge to your ego. So you have to run away from every challenge, right? So the people that blame everybody else is like, I know that I'm not good enough, but I can't take that pain. I can't accept that truth. So it's got to be your fault.
I mean
Same root, different response.
it's so I've read a lot of books, and that really sums up
Mm-hmm.
all the attachment ones, basically. And that's so profound. It's simple, but yet profound. And you, do you mind
Sure.
sharing about the attachment styles of the anxious and also and the avoidant, and also, do entrepreneurs and overachievers or high achievers tend to be
Mm-hmm.
more anxiously attached or more avoidant or ambivalent, whatever terminology you might use?
So somebody who has anxious attachment style, they feel like they're not good enough. Who do I need to be to make myself acceptable to you? Right. Avoidant is, okay, I can't withstand the pain of not being enough. So I'm just going to avoid any situation that might push that button. Okay. Then you've got disorganized attachment style, where you're both anxious and avoidant. So you're trying to be what everybody else needs, but you can't withstand that challenge to your ego. Okay. If you think about like pleasure and pain, right, you move away from pleasure, or sorry, you move towards pleasure, move away from pain. All right. This is the trap I call the treadmill in my book. Most entrepreneurs are on that treadmill. They're disorganized attachment style. There's a painful situation in their past that they're running from, and they're getting rewarded by all the stuff they're doing. So they're running towards that reinforcement and so forth and so on. They're running away from this, and they can't withstand the challenge to their ego. They can't turn around and face that stuff. Right? But then there's that fourth attachment style, secure, where you actually got everything you needed when you're growing up. Right? Where you actually had fulfillment, you weren't challenged and so forth and so on, so you're 100% good with yourself. Those are people that are just doing it for the love of the game. Right? This is the difference between like Michael Phelps, the Olympic swimmer, that just crushed like a million freaking world records that year and walked away with like 20 gold medals, versus like Michael Jordan, who was motivated by that chip on his shoulder and so forth and so on. Michael Phelps is just doing it for the love of the game. How far can I go? How much can I do? Right. So you can be either one, but the number of entrepreneurs that are secure attachment style, they're just doing it for the love of the game, very, very low. So many people get in there because it's a scoreboard. They can put points on the board. They can measure. They can set goals and achieve. So they can keep trying to prove to themselves how good they are, which doesn't work, which is why they always got to keep running. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And so how do you in your work introduce this idea of inner peace, or lead them to secure attachment? And I
Mm-hmm.
love, by the way, thank you so much for talking about attachment theory
Mm-hmm.
in this work, because it gets overlooked so
Yeah.
much in I mean, not just traditional therapy or
Mm-hmm.
psychotherapy or psychology.
Yeah.
Now a little bit more in somatic work,
Mm-hmm.
but not combining it the way that you're combining it. So this is so huge. Thank you. So yeah, so how do we even introduce peace to someone that doesn't know what it feels like, or doesn't even know how good their life could be? And I'm not sure if this happens with you, but a lot of people that come to me, it's
Mm-hmm.
not what they come in for a symptom. It's not what they actually want, right? It's like
Yeah.
there's an expression like you tell them what they want to hear, but give them what they need ultimately. And
Yeah.
not that I'm doing anything. They're unconscious, the
Mhm.
wisdom within them is doing it. So can you speak to how do you even get someone to feel comfortable with secure attachment or inner peace?
Okay. So it's a side effect of what I do. Okay. I don't get them to secure attachment. Secure attachment happens when there's no part of you that you don't accept. You don't blame yourself anymore. Okay. So what I'm doing is really all about kind of clearing out the pipes. All right. If you go back to the concept of all these different aspects of self, it's, to me, the way I kind of look at it is you've got soul. Soul is self. It's being manifested and projected and expressing itself in the world through all these different aspects. Okay. The more you clear out and align those things, the more clearly soul can express itself in the world, the more authentically it can. Okay. So it's about figuring out what's in the way, making sure, getting all the different parts aligned, getting them to work together as a team the way they're supposed to be. Okay. And this is all about confronting all those different parts of yourself, all those things about yourself you don't like. But the thing is, those are just judgments you made about yourself because you couldn't get what you needed. Right. So we can figure out where those judgments came from and fix those. Now it's okay to have those parts. All right. For me, it's all about going back again, discovering what those stories are that we tell about ourselves, right? And then rewriting the stories. There's a set of conclusions you drew. You made a mistake. That's it, right? You made a mistake about what you thought about things. So we correct the mistake. And now you get to see about yourself different. And if all it is you just made a mistake, well, there's no reason not to accept yourself, right? Because you did the best you could at the time. Everybody does. In my opinion, everybody is doing everything exactly right at all points in time. Because if you could do it better, you would. Right? So you're doing everything to the best of your ability every single moment of every day. And if that's the case, why can you blame yourself? Right? So you kind of just walk them through this process of like, okay, let's go ahead and get all these things and just address all these different pieces. And where I try and get my clients to, the ultimate goal is a very simple set of beliefs. There's nothing wrong with me and there never was. There's nothing to heal and there never was. I'm good enough as I am to deserve whatever I choose. I don't have to prove it to anybody, not even myself. And when you're at that place, there's no part of you you have to judge anymore. When you're at that place, there's nothing stopping you from being your full authentic self. Right? And so secure attachment kind of happens as a byproduct because number one, there's no reason to hide. No need to be anything else. You don't have to worry about your ego being challenged because you know exactly who you are. And your standards raise because you're not willing to accept anything less because you deserve more. Now, the problem is once you get there, like I got there last year, I had no idea what a healthy relationship looked like. That's the process. That's the hard part after what I do. It's like now you have to learn how to move through the world in this very different way. Right. But I've got this. This is my lane in the road. This is my magic. You kind of got to go to other people to figure that out. Right. But once it's easier to do that, because that becomes left brain stuff. All the emotional stuff is taken care of. This is a lot easier to do. Right. You can get this from all kinds of coaches, all kinds of books, so forth and so on. Hard work's done.
I love that. And it's funny because I was just thinking I was going to ask you that about integration. It's almost like
Mm-hmm.
this work, the actual process that you're doing with your clients, and through your book and through your work
Mm-hmm.
helping people is the easy part. It's what happens, like how do you go out then and go back to your life and integrate what you've learned? So
Right.
can you help us or give some suggestions to people that do have these shifts, or how do you guide your clients? Do you work with them for like a little while afterwards to make
Mm-hmm.
sure that they're integrated and they're able
Mm-hmm.
to, even though it is a little bit easier with the left brain, other
Mm-hmm.
things in their reality haven't shifted in the same way?
Sure. So, as part of the process, as I'm doing each individual session, you have these big shifts, right? And normally there's this period afterwards where you have to integrate and do all that sort of stuff, right? I use a hypnotic technique. I call it the gallery exercise. The guy who taught it to me calls it the resource organizer. Basically, it's a technique that says, okay, go back to a moment in time that didn't work for you, put it in a frame, turn up the dial, get rid of the emotional content, and pull out the lesson. Because the only thing that really matters from the past is what do you need to learn? So we do this a couple of times and we say, okay, great. Now that you understand this technique, do it to everything that you need to. Just go ahead and speed run, get all the lessons you need, and then we can come back. So you do this rapid integration process where your mind goes ahead and generalizes those changes throughout everything it needs to do, right? After that, you already know what you want to do. You already know how to do it. You just didn't have the capacity to because you were in your own way. So there's not a whole lot of integration process because you do that integration process on the inside and you give your mind a tool to go ahead and do it on its own. And because it's on an unconscious level, because those are the kind of pieces that need to do that work, you don't have to do anything consciously. You don't even know what needs to be done. Don't worry about it. You got people for that. Let them do their job. Let them do that. If there's a question they have, they'll let you know. And then you go looking for the answer, come back, we're good to go. So you just kind of let that process sort of play out naturally. Your mind, those different parts of your mind, your instinctive mind is there to worry about physical survival. Your emotional mind is there about meaning. It's talk about good and bad and right and wrong. Your rational mind is about true and false. It's about facts. It's about the objective world outside of you, right? So you've got parts of yourself and parts of your mind that handle those things. Let them do their job. And it's a lot easier to do when you're at peace with yourself and you're integrated and you've made that bond and you sort of built that team again because you can trust your mind to do its job.
I love that because it's a lot less of doing and trying and striving and figuring out and all of that. So and I even myself have to be reminded like it does.
Yeah.
There's nothing that has to happen once you do that. When you start to unravel, you're in the flow state. A lot of people will think of it, a flow
Yeah.
state or an unfolding or an unraveling or life, like right, just being. So
Just be. That's the
yeah,
key.
just
Just be
being.
you. So the way I say it is like you need to do three things to get everything you want in life. You need to be your authentic self to the maximum extent possible. You need to listen. You need to get curious. That first one's the hard part because a lot of people don't like who they are, so they don't get to be their authentic selves. But after we do this process, now this is possible, right? And the other thing is you already know on every level of self who you really are to the extent that that part needs to know it to do its job. So there's not even need to understand who you are on a conscious level. You just get to be you, right? So ego falls away. You only need an ego when you don't like who you are because you're trying to be somebody different. Okay. Second thing you got to do is got to listen. All these different parts of you have a function, right? Your instinctive mind is there about physical safety, pleasure and pain, good and bad, right and wrong, true and false, want and don't want, should and should not. They're compasses. Go this way, go away. Point your thing at the North Star and let your mind tell you if you're on the right track. Right? You got that mission, got that thing you want, got that thing you want to achieve in life. If you're heading in the right direction, everything's lined up, good to go. Keep going. At some point, something's gonna be off. You're gonna feel something. Something's not gonna be right. Great. Number 3, get curious. Take a step back, start asking yourself questions. It's gonna lead you to say, oh, I need to know more about this. Get curious about this. Go in this direction. Great. Do that. As soon as you get the answer, back on track again. That's all you have to do. Just be you to the maximum extent possible, in your most authentic way. Listen to yourself. Get curious.
Authenticity, listen to yourself, get curious. I mean,
How do you know when? How do you know when you've? How do they know when they've reached that point? I made it. I'm my authentic self today, where I wasn't for the first however many years. Right? So, what is that? What are the tells that you're there?
Talk about confidence, right? Everybody says confidence comes from competence, right? The more competent you get at something, the more confident you feel, right? And so there's the idea that confidence is something you gain. But everybody's 100% confident at being themselves. Absolutely killing it. Nobody's doing it better ever in the history of the world. So why aren't we confident in who we are? Confidence is not about what we gain. Confidence is about what we lose. As we get better at something, we lose the fear and the doubt and the uncertainty. Right? Start driving a car, you're a nervous wreck, having to think about everything all the time, right? And as you get better and better, it just becomes a natural thing. So the sign that you've made it is no fear, no doubt, no uncertainty about who you are. Everything is just easy. You're just going through life. There's no questioning yourself. You're just being yourself and rocking and rolling. All the questions you have are about what's happening out there and what you should do next and how to do the thing, not about who you are. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's a yeah. I mean, I guess it's going to be different for each person to where they're at. Seemingly a lot of the people that we talked about, the myriad of people that kind of are out there doing something that's worked, maybe mainstream. In the book, you go through a lot of the classic, go to a shrink, all the different
Mhm.
types of therapy that people have done historically, right? From the 50s, 60s on. How do people, when they get to that flow state, like Tara was talking about,
Mhm.
or they finally reach that plateau or the mountain, the peak, how do they seemingly they may have got it's possible that they may have reached or stumbled across some kind of other strategy to get themselves there. How do you prevent them, or how do they, what tips or guidance do you give them to prevent themselves from falling back and regressing and, coming back down? So how can this be sustainable?
So if the belief set you have is there's nothing wrong with me, never was, then you're never going to look at yourself as a problem to fix. If there's nothing to heal and never was, then there's no wounding, there's nothing to heal, don't have to deal with trauma anymore. If you're good enough as you are, don't have to improve yourself, don't have to change anything. If you deserve what you choose, there's never a question about that. Don't have to prove it, don't have to, and nobody, you can't have to prove it yourself, don't have to prove it to anybody else, which means nobody can disprove you. Again, that's the truth against which everything else is measured. So if something out there doesn't match, I'm good enough, it's false by definition, gets ignored. So if you can't change those beliefs from the outside in, what's going to happen out there that's going to cause you to regress? I'll give you an example. I kind of got to this place, where I'm at right now, about a year and a half or so ago, 2 years ago. Last summer, last June, I found out that I had bipolar disorder. I had an extreme acute manic episode, psychotic break, lost my mind. Okay. Spent about 14 months trying to get my mind stable through medications and stuff like that. In that period of time, all my relationships fell away. My business lost about 75% of its revenue. There were days where I couldn't get out of bed before, 2:00 in the afternoon. Lots of days I just couldn't work. Right. One medication actually, gave me thoughts of ending my life multiple times a day for about 2 weeks. And I was fine. It was okay. Because none of that was about me. It's just a situation I was going through. Just a process I had to go through, just a problem I had to work. So it didn't change how much I deserve. Didn't change how much I'm worth. It doesn't change the fact there's nothing wrong with me. This is just how I'm built. Got to figure out a way to navigate the world because of it. Nothing to heal. This is just stuff I'm feeling. If you can go through something that severe and this stays permanent, what do you have to do to maintain it? It's just true.
Thank you so much for sharing that. That's
Mm-hmm.
sorry that you have to go through that in a polite way, but I know that was
Mm-hmm.
your experience, and so
Yeah.
it was perfect for you. Can you speak to, so for me, the way that I see it is that the soul or the self is the
Mm-hmm.
one that is navigating. I can get through anything, and it like you
Yep.
did. How did you find, or how do you connect? Is there a practice that you have? Was there a time in your life that you really did feel like, when I think soul or self, I do tend to point to my heart, but anyone, it could be anywhere.
Sure.
Did you have that moment, that awakening, that realization, or do you feel as though you grew up that way? You were born with a solid connection to your soul or self or whatever you'd like to call it.
Mm-hmm.
So that being one question, and then part two would be, do you have a practice that you do in terms of meditation or contemplation or prayer or anything like that?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so two really good questions. No, for the very longest time, I wasn't really connected to that part of me. Matter of fact, that wasn't something I was pursuing at all. Back in 2021, I started on a real big, heavy self-improvement thing because I had to figure out a way to get what I wanted in life, or life was not going to be worth living, and I was out. Went to this retreat, worked with psychedelics for the first time. And that's the moment where, I've got a tattoo on my chest that says I'm alive. The day is July 29th, 2021, because that's the first day in my life that I could remember actually believing that I could get what I wanted and needed in life. Okay. So I kept on this journey of like playing with different psychedelics and doing all these different techniques. One of my clients was a heavy psychedelic guy and says, hey, I want you to come out and play with what I got. Got some unique stuff. Fair enough. So I went out there and he says, what would you like to work on? I was like, well, I kind of want to work on my connection to divine. Grew up Catholic. I've always believed in the divine and God, but faith is hard. I'm autistic. Faith is hard. So I said, I want to work on that. Fair enough. So we did some DMT, and I had that experience of dying, ceasing to exist, and then coming back. I came back with some answers. And the answer I had was, it's all so simple. Because when you figure it out, when you actually understand, it really is. Right? But having that experience of leaving, ceasing to exist and coming back, like, how can you not believe in soul at that point? Right? So earlier this year, I'm sitting there trying to figure out, because again, like, found out I'm autistic, found out I'm bipolar. Now I have to question everything that's ever happened in my life. Right? Why did I do this? Why did I do that? what's this mean? What's this other thing mean? Because now my understanding of what my motivations could have been is completely different. Everything I thought I knew about my life is completely wrong. Right. So I'm sitting there asking myself, like, man, who am I? What am I exactly? Like, what is all this stuff? Right. And it hit me. It's like, wait a second. Got all these different aspects of self, right? Consciousness and soul and so forth and so on. It's like, what I am really is all of that combined and probably more. Right. And if that's the case, how can I possibly comprehend that? How can that possibly condense to something that the human mind can comprehend? Much less simplified to something that consciousness can understand. It's impossible, right? So if that's the case, why am I bothering to ask a question if it can't be answered? Right? But then you think, okay, well, so how do you navigate then? Okay, great. Think about your body. You've got a heart, it's got a job. Lungs have got a job. Skin has got a job. Brain's got a job, right? And if you go into your brain, you've got different structures to do different things there, right? Your audio cortex, which processes sound, different than the part of you that processes language, right? Part of you by the process of vision, different than one that processes symbols. So each and every piece of that has a different job. And it's taking different parts of reality and processing in different ways. Same thing with the different aspects of self, right? So any one aspect of self only needs to understand soul or self to the extent that is necessary to do its job. Okay. So what do we need to do on a conscious level? Consciousness has two jobs. Number one is kind of the ultimate decider, right? Sets a course, right? And sort of resolves conflicts when it needs to happen. The second thing is to be the witness of our experience, to be the part of us that's watching the movie of our life play out in real time. Okay. Well, if that's the case, how much do you really need to know? Not much. Not much at all. Right? You set the direction. You're enjoying the ride. Now you've decided to go to the store, and all of a sudden this magic happens where you get in your car, roll out, and you're enjoying yourself, singing along, come back. You didn't do any of that. You took absolutely no conscious effort to do any of that stuff. You are watching yourself do that. You're watching the movie of your life play out in real time. Don't need to know much about yourself to do that. So I simply allow myself to be me. I just do whatever. It's like whatever comes naturally. If you like doing this, great. I'm going to do that. Why? Because that's what I feel like doing. Okay, fair enough. Soul must have a reason for doing that. If there's a reason I need to question myself, there's going to be part of me that says, hey, something's wrong. At which point, get curious. So there's no need to meditate and journal and all this sort of stuff. You already know yourself to the extent that you need to, the maximum extent possible on every level of self. A lot of these practices kind of go away, right? Journaling becomes a different kind of exercise. Meditation becomes for a different thing. You're doing all this practice for different stuff. Like I do energetic work. I study Tantra. And I'm not doing it to whatever. I'm doing it to play with this energy and enjoy this thing and do manifestation and putting my energy into those sorts of things, right? I'm not trying to fix myself. I'm good to go, right? Meditation becomes an exploration of consciousness rather than a trying to calm myself down, trying to distance myself from my thoughts and my emotions. Right? Prayer becomes connecting to the divine rather than to try and fix yourself or whatever it happens to be. The practices you use become different purposes because you don't need to do anything to maintain the state once it's there.
Yeah, we talk a little bit about that in terms of Eastern and Western meditation, right? In the West, it's to help us be more productive or to be more calm or like to get to a certain state. And we're trying to of course that's great for many people, a good start, but I love your take on it. And, I'm reading the Surrender Experiment right now, and I love the way that he speaks of this notion, right? As soon as that thought and that voice in your mind is popping in, get curious. It's like, why is that there? Why is that there? It leads me to my next question would be, what is a book that you would recommend for people to check out at some point in their life? Something that's helped you in the past, or just one of those kind of like Surrender Experiment for me, or like, I know Eckhart Tolle is a great place for people to start, that kind of a thing.
Man, that's an excellent question. I haven't had anybody ask me that one before. So one of the big things for me is like masculine and feminine dynamics and kind of those, understanding those roles and those polarities, right? And as a man, the most important one to recognize, to understand is the masculine. So for me, one of the biggest ones is king, warrior, magician, lover. It's kind of going over those four masculine archetypes. And the beautiful thing about it is it's talking about it not only just in terms of what these are, but there's an immature and a mature version. And there's two shadow versions for each of those. Right. So it really gives you this beautiful insight into all the different ways the masculine can manifest. And because you can see where you are in all these different places, oh, here I am, I need to get here. Or I'm manifesting this thing, great, I need to get here. Right? It's this beautiful sort of way to kind of measure where you're at, understand where you're at, but not in terms of rules and checkboxes and lists, in terms of principles, in terms of archetypes, because those are a lot more durable because they're those big picture emotional things, right? You're installing these North Stars. You're making, putting a North Pole and a North Star to point your compass at.
One of the
Amazing.
things I keep coming back to is,
Mhm.
All right, you make that achievement. You don't need really any other direction because you're kind of, that internal compass is there. It's leading you.
Mhm.
You feel like you want to do something, you do it, right? But there are still the barriers of the people around you that
Sure.
society's built, that culture's built, that you live in, that society tells you have to do something, you have to be some kind of way. You talked about, men not building or people not building things or making things. If I feel
Sure.
like I have a desire that I want to go work on cars, but they're being made in a different country, that
Mhm.
I can't do that anymore, right? Or I want to go
Sure.
work on engines, but the hybrids are the only things out there. So I might want to do something, but it might not. It might be frowned upon by the people that are around me, the society that
Mhm.
I'm in. There might be employment challenges. There's a whole host of
Mhm.
things. How do people deal with that? Overcome? Just kind of smile and nod and keep going through it, or find like-minded people? It's a multi-layered question, but how do
Sure.
you deal with the roadblocks and the stumbling blocks that you're going to get from society and people around you and the
Yep.
culture that you're in when you make this change?
Okay. So one of the big things I do in this work is we take a different look at emotions. Okay. Emotions are like, everybody's like, oh my God, these things are happening to me, so forth and so on. It's not really true. This is the output from your emotional mind. It's telling you what the world means. It's a signal. It's your mind asking you for help to solve a problem. Okay. It's not pain. It's a signal saying, hey, I need some help with this. Okay. Once you make that shift from it's not pain, it's a signal, it's a question, now you don't have to avoid it. You can engage with it as much as you need to. All right. And every emotion then is asking you to solve a different kind of problem. All right. Anxiety is that freeze response. There's a problem out there. It's not here yet, but it's coming down the pike. So I got to prepare for it. You've got shame, failed to meet a standard. Right. That's all that is. Great. So once you recognize this, now you've got some really interesting tools because problems are really easy to solve once you know what the problem is. Right. If you know what the problem is, the solution's pretty easy. So one of two things is true. Either number one, you know what the problem is, worst case, you're working it, no big deal. Or number two, you're running up against a wall, at which point you're going to start feeling some stuff. And what you feel is asking you a question about what kind of problem it is. It's going to help you find the actual problem. Right? So all you do is get curious, go down that rabbit hole, you figure out what the problem is. Now you're back on point one, solving it, you're good to go. Right? The other thing is, once emotions stop being pain, it's not something you have to avoid. You can engage with them as long as you need to. If there's no emotional pain, there's no mental or emotional suffering anymore. Right? Your capacity to do work is based on your capacity to withstand discomfort and suffering. Right? Your physical capacity until you get sore, so forth and so on, that limits your capacity to do work. But if there's no mental or emotional suffering, no mental or emotional pain, then your capacity for mental and emotional work is essentially infinite. Right? So you've got infinite capacity to solve problems. Your mind helps you figure out what the problem is if you don't know what it is. And if you can't figure it out on your own, your mind says, hey, this guy can probably help. The two of you figure it out and you're on the way again. So you get to this place where anything you want in life is basically yours. It's just a matter of time. It's inevitable. Right? So how do you navigate these things? Great. Am I around a bunch of people that don't like me? Sweet. Go find different people. And the beautiful thing is because you can be your authentic self and you're showing the world exactly who you are, you automatically attract the people that can understand and appreciate you best. Right? And it doesn't matter what the world says you're supposed to be because you know who you are. And because you're not trying to be anybody else, it doesn't matter what they say you should be. You're going to be you anyways. And if the world around you, the situation you're in doesn't match that, awesome. Off you go. It's one of these things, one of the big challenges of all this work, as you level up, as you evolve, so forth and so on, is that you don't fit the environment you're in. You don't fit the friend groups anymore. Kind of have to let those things fall away for the right people to come in for the next level of evolution. Is that an uncomfortable process?
A lot of times you're going to need to find a new tribe in a way,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because
100%.
you're not going to be able to relate to the people that, aren't going to go on the journey with you in a way. And do you find that people that you haven't seen maybe since pre-21 or pre kind of this change are like, wow, Ryan, there's, something different about you, do you get a lot of that?
Well, I'm a little bit different because I'm I don't really keep in touch with a lot of people, between the ADHD and autism. Like I kind of like forget people exist if they're not in my life on a regular basis. It's just like kind of one of those things that goes with that. But if you talk like my parents and stuff like that, yeah, they completely understand the difference. And there's some folks that I've been in touch with, friends of mine that have been watching me on this journey and seeing that major transformation, right? But these are people who can keep up. They want to play on that game too. People have taken along with me on that journey, right? So yeah, would I look completely different? Absolutely. Right. The fearlessness, the absolute authenticity, the complete lack of care about what people think. Yeah, that's 100% different. Right. Because before I had to sort of show everybody a different side of me. Masking, right? It's a very autistic thing. I've got to be this thing in this situation, this thing in another situation, so forth and so on. And it got so bad that back in 2009, I actually had a major depressive episode because I was being pulled in so many different directions. I was so fragmented that it just all hit me and I just broke. Right. Not fun. And so I did a lot of work again with the therapist to put myself back together and good enough that I could get back to moving. But now that everything's integrated, now that I don't have to hide, now that I don't have to pretend, I don't have to worry about it anymore. I'm just going to be me in every single situation.
That's awesome. Well, is there a right direction to go in after you've kind of had this breakthrough? Like you, the queens, the people that you work with, is anything okay? I'm my true self, I'm my best self, my one self. If I just want to waste away and play Call of Duty and, whatever, is there something where should people find their calling, or is there no right answer? It's whatever they want to do. I mean, outside of, that's like outside of hurting people. If, I'm a masochist and I like find my way, is that okay? Right. That I'm just, you know what I'm saying? Like, is there a direction? It's difficult for us to tell people, what they should be doing with their life here. So I don't know if you can answer that question or not. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll say a couple of different things. In order to even do this work, you have to be willing to like confront and accept the things about yourself you really don't like, you wish weren't true. So there's a lot of people that aren't going to be able to go there, right? So the people who are going to be like really messed up and hurting people, they're never going to do this work, right? They're just not capable, right? So kind of don't have to worry about that piece. So now the next piece is like, okay, where do I go? There's kind of two answers to that. First of all, yes, it's 100% okay for you to do whatever you want. Because since I'm not judging my value and my worth based on external factors anymore, it's perfectly fine for me to go hang out on the beach in Bali for a couple of years because that's what I want to do. And it's perfectly fine for me to make a corporate empire. But every soul has a purpose. Everybody's got a journey. Everybody's got that something in them that they really want to do. They've got that North Star. And you're just not going to feel fulfilled unless you do that. Right? So maybe, I dealt with suicidal ideation for 47 years. Maybe it's time for me to take a vacation for a little while, just take care of myself. But pretty soon, that's going to get kind of boring. I want to feel that urge to do something else, at which point I get curious. Let's see where that takes me.
Yeah, I would add to that. I think that there is an element of when you get to that point, like you don't want to play video games anymore,
No.
or whatever your pastime, often a numbingness. Usually those activities that we sometimes are like, oh, I wish I could just drink Mai Tais all day on the beach. Yeah, maybe, and there could be a time for that, but like you said, then you get to a point when you maybe rest up from the decades of stress you put on your body. You're like, you get that inner guidance that is telling you like, oh, that's my soul's purpose, or it's not going to necessarily come in like a paragraph form.
Yeah, go that way. Get curious. It's like you need to go down this rabbit hole. You learn something. Oh, got to play with this. Okay, great. Now I got to go over here. Great. Now I understand this, and off you go.
Right.
Yeah.
100%. And I would say to people that you'll know when you get those pings or that like desire, that curiosity, like you're saying, that curiosity, it's uncanny, and you can feel it, and that's beautiful, and I love the way that you've articulated all of this.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
So yeah. How do people how do you work with people? How do people follow you aside from reading your amazing book, Winner Peace? If you want to talk about that for a minute.
Sure. Okay. Winner Peace is really I've got a very different approach, very different worldview, some really different ideas about how things work and so forth and so on. So I wanted to get that out there in the world as best I could because it's a very different framework and approach. And I worked with a guy by the name of Joshua Lysick to do it. He's also a trained hypnotist. So it's actually designed as a hypnosis program in written form, the audible version as well. So to the extent that you can get all the benefits of working with me one-on-one in those formats, this book is designed to give you all of that. So even before you start working with me, you're already going to be moving in the right direction. You're going to have a lot more frameworks. Everything's going to be easier for you. After that, if you need to, and if you choose to, you can work with me one-on-one. My website is www.ryanthehypnotist.com. All right. Sit down, do a 45-minute consultation. We'll take a look at what's going on in your life, see what work we need to do. I do not charge for individual sessions. Like I said before, there's a certain endpoint. Nothing wrong with me. Never was. Nothing to heal. Never was. Good enough as I am. Deserve for whatever I choose. Don't have to prove it. We work together until you're there. I don't care how long it takes. 1 session, 10 sessions, doesn't matter. Typically, it's only 3 to 4 sessions because there's really only 4 things we have to fix. The idea that there's something wrong with you, the idea that emotions are pain, and deal with that whole determination of worth. So if there's only 4 things to fix, it really doesn't take very long.
That's awesome. It's so succinct. It's so succinct. You have such a confidence. You can't help but really be enraptured by it. And,
Thank
you
you.
make it seem a bit almost effortless. I know there's a lot that goes into it for sure. One thing that I do like to end on, Tara had a great book question is a little tip or a technique or a bit of advice if you do have for our audience. You do work with a lot of high achievers. You had mentioned the ADHD. You're doing a lot yourself. A lot of times that can have some benefits too, because it can really make you driven and get you to could do a lot of work. Sometimes, though, there are mental blocks. Maybe when writing the book, you had a little bit of writer's block. There's this over perfectionism. Is there something that when people do get blocked up that they're achieving and they're so demanding of themselves, but they just can't, kind of finish or get to where they're wanted to go? Do you have something that they could do, at work, at home, when they're almost there, but, they just need to step back and find their way around what obstacles in front of them? Is there anything that you have that you can provide?
Sure. Again, there's this principle of it's all so simple. When you understand what the problem is, once you understand the situation, it's also simple, right? So if there's any confusion, any pressure, any sort of friction, if it's complicated to you, you don't understand it yet. So take a step back and start looking for all the different assumptions that you made to underlie that system. Okay? Take a step back, look at the assumptions, because one of those is going to be wrong. It's going to be incorrect in some way, right? If you look at Elon Musk, why was he so successful with Tesla? Because he looked at battery technology and said, there's got to be something wrong. He looked at all the assumptions and he found a few. And now he was able to do batteries a different way. Same thing with SpaceX. Oh, we can't do reusable rockets? Watch me. Because he sat back and looked at all the different assumptions, right? So if you're running up against a wall, you're just not able to break through, step back, start looking at those different assumptions because something there is missing. Something there is wrong. And when you find it, it's going to be very simple.
There is that, timeless phrase, right? What happens when you assume, right? You make, what out of you and me. I mean, that's a big takeaway of this episode, because a lot of these, false assumptions, like Ryan is telling you guys out there, are totally stunting your ability in masking, and it can be made so much clearer if you get to the bottom of it. And it's so simple, but it's so powerful, and it's an awesome message. Really appreciate it. Pleasure meeting you. To everyone, go out there, definitely winner peace. Absolutely. Going to be really beneficial to everyone. There's a ton in there. There's a lot that we talk about on Your One Self and, on the podcast, Journey to Your Best Self. So I think it's going to be a great read. We'll link it in the show notes and link your site as well so people can connect with you.
Thank you so much.
It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for the work that you do, because it's so impactful and so needed. So
thank you guys so much for having me. It was a wonderful discussion.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Journey to Your Best Self podcast. We appreciate you being part of this community. For more resources, insights, and ways to connect, head over to youroneself.com. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow us on YouTube, Instagram, and wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts, including Apple, Spotify, and Overcast. Your support means the world to us. Until next time, keep aligning your mind, body, and spirit, and peace, love, and self-discovery.